Hamish, as I understand it, you spent 25 years at Leighton before this sort of abrupt elevation to the CEO role. Was the Leighton that you saw as a senior executive out of Asia the Leighton that you've come to appreciate as CEO, or are they different?
They're very different, actually. And you say I've had 25 years with the company. I didn't have it all with Leighton. I originally started off with John Holland and then went to Leighton International as at that stage. I then came here to Leighton Contractors. I then went to Leighton Asia and then to Leighton Holdings. And there's, I guess, two parts of the answer. One is Leighton Holdings and what is it, and the other one is what is our opcos, the operating companies. And I had time in all of the operating companies, and they are all very, very different. They're all underpinned by the same basic corporate values and corporate culture, but each of them has their own interpretation of that. So they've got quite unique corporate DNA. They've got quite unique core competencies. All general contractors at their heart, but it's incredible to see how they've evolved over time. The big difference of going into Leighton Holdings is not a construction company. One of the things that shocked me going in there is, I asked the people, put your hand up if you're an engineer. Well, there aren't any, or they're very few, and that's because Leighton Holdings are a strategic management company. They have no clients, they have no customers. All of the projects are delivered through our operating company. So Leighton Holdings is responsible for the balance sheet, the strategic direction of the company. The operating companies is where we deliver and where we carry out our projects.
Should you have more engineers within Leighton Holdings?
I think the issue, should we have more engineers? If I interpret that question in a certain way, is where should risk be mitigated?
Yes.
Now, for me, risk needs to be mitigated at its source, where it's identified, where you can actually influence the outcome. So where I want to see more engineers is on our projects, right, or in our pre-contract teams, because it's not, if we take away from the accountability of our projects, people think that risk is being mitigated in a head office, where it's not. It needs to be mitigated at the source. So the risks that Leighton Holdings experience is strategic risk, enterprise risk. How are we managing our balance sheet? Are we positioning the company for sustainable growth? That's what Leighton should be managing at Leighton Holdings level, and that's not necessarily engineers. I'm an engineer. We do need engineers and construction people in there, but we also need people with different skills that manage corporate public company risk, not just focusing on project risk, because that should be mitigated at its source, which is at the projects.
Throughout its history, Leighton's has been a fantastic story. And then all of a sudden you had these projects blowing up, the diesel plant in Queensland, the joint venture in the Middle East. So did something go wrong, or were they just kind of a string of coincidental disasters?
I think I refer to them as the tsunamis, and they're two of those tsunamis are very similar, which is Airport Link and VDP, because they're both projects. HLG, which is the Middle East, was an investment, right? Now, that has total different reasons why we're having challenges there. So we actually, for the first time in the company's history, spent a lot of money buying a company that was a property developer in Dubai at the height of the bubble, at the peak. Now, we got the timing wrong and everything, but so that is quite a unique challenge in itself. It's an investment, and it's in a business that is driven by petrodollars. So that is more of an investment problem or an investment tsunami, which those things do happen every now and again. Would we overpay for a company going forward again? No, absolutely not. With Airport Link and VDP, that's the core of our business, which is projects, and it was just incredibly unusual that we had two major disasters on our projects happening at the same time. And if you look at the percentage complete of those jobs, one's 92%, one's 95% today. So that wave of tsunamis is on top of each other and has just flowed through since the problems were first identified last April. So it's been a challenge.
Are the mistakes that were made in the desalination plant very similar to the Southern Cross railway station mistakes? And you, of course, helped rescue that Southern Cross contract. When something goes wrong as big as this, it's not traced back to one root cause. We've done a thorough review of lessons learnt and risk assessment to see how can we mitigate these issues from happening in the future. And I try to look at what is common across all of them, and one thing that's common across all of them is people. Right? Leighton have got 54,000 staff, and we rely on our people to use the right judgment. Our tools don't tell us how much things cost. Our people enter information into our tools, and the output, is finally a tender. People, review tender, specifications and quantities and contracts. If I look back at all of those, we made some errors during the tender phase, which were identified during the delivery phase. Now, one of the things that is common to all of those projects is their PPPs. And in the PPP, we do all of the design, and we don't deliver or develop the design past about 20% complete at tender stage. So as we win the job, we start developing the solution and we start working through it. So you get to 50–60% complete through those jobs, and all of a sudden you have a full set of drawings of what you're going to build, and then you can price it. And if that doesn't equal what you assumed originally, we have a problem.
Both in Spencer Street or Southern Cross and in the desalination plant, relations with the union and the workforce were big reasons for those losses, and they were very similar. And interestingly, in the case of the desalination plant, Holland, which operates in an entirely different way to Thiess, which won the contract, actually tended lower. It was a fascinating scenario.
Yeah, and that just goes to show that it's about the overall solution. A PPP isn't just about the construction; it's about the solution in regard to all of the components of a PPP. In Spencer Street, the major challenge there was just how to build it. We were operating over a live rail track. Connex in those days were the rail operator. We had to get access. So there was a lot of issues just with how on earth do we build this? We shut the rail down for 3 or 4 hours at night, and all of a sudden it rains or there's a bit of wind. We can't work. So then the same thing happens the next day and the next day. So the engineering solution didn't necessarily deal with the environment that we were working in. Now, yes, there were industrial problems, but the industrial problems on Spencer Street very different to what is occurring on VDP. Spencer Street, was a lot of frustration over how do we work in this live environment. We never closed the station. The whole time the station was built, the public were coming in and out. It was hard to distinguish where is the construction site, where is the public station, and all the time we had to create a safe environment, and that meant that everybody was on their toes on that job. In the end of the day, Spencer Street was, it's still, for me, yes, it lost a lot of money, but it won all sorts of awards for architecture, for engineering, and certainly for the state. It is by far the best railway station in Australia and arguably in this part of the world. With VDP, it's a totally different environment. VDP, the issues are more around the roster and around productivity, because that's a greenfield site. We've been able to contain the site, and a lot of issues there with with cyclonic conditions, with the weather, that has meant that we haven't been able to work as productively as what we originally planned.
Do you think you've taken all the loss, or is there more to come?
The loss on the cost is contained. If you look, when a job's 93–95% complete, even if there's a 5% or a 10% blowout, it's not a material impact. The big issue with those projects is time, and we're moving into a critical phase now, which is the commissioning of the plant. And if that goes well and we get first water in July, like we're currently programming and like we have in our budgets, then we're fine. The challenge on VDP is just getting that first water in July and then repeating the same process, so that we get handover at the end of the year.
The description you gave of the way those projects evolve and the fact that you can't get a proper handle on the cost until you're well into it. Is there anything you can do to mitigate that, or do you just not go into those PPPs?
It's not that you can't get a proper handle on the cost. You make various assumptions, and 99% of the time those assumptions we make are correct. But if something happens there, and clauses such as durability, if there's an issue with the working environment and spans have to get larger, therefore you need more beams, more steel, quantities start to grow. If you can't get into a site and actually evaluate the geotechnical conditions
because it's a working environment. You know, there are things that definitely can be done in the industry to minimise, you know, the risks and minimise the, you know, the likelihood of any cost or quantity overrun. Usually it's quantity overrun that results in a cost overrun.
But will you do things fundamentally different in future in relation to those large projects?
Yeah, the main area is around engineering and the quality of the engineering design that we get. We rely usually on consultants to outsource engineering to give us the, you know, the advice, the basic parameters that we need, and that's something that we're reviewing is, you know, the quality of that information that we get, so that, you know, the assumptions that we make, you know, mainly on quantities and what the finished product's going to look like, you know, is correct or with a higher degree of accuracy.
I think you've referred publicly to the concept of adding to your skills base, adding more sort of IP within the group.
Yeah.
Is that part of that sort of response?
Very much. I think one of the, you know, if I go back in time and you look at Leighton Group, we used to have a part of Leighton called Technical Resources, and it used to be part of Leighton Holdings. And in there were a whole series of engineers and planners and forecasters, people that did methodology, and they were best in class. They were the best that the company had. When we started bidding against each other across the operating company models, because of probity, we couldn't access those shared skills. So one of the negatives about the company bidding together on what are high-risk jobs is that each individual team puts up the best people that they possibly have. But that may not be the best team that the group has. So certainly going forward, when we see a high-risk job that really requires the group to muster all of its strengths and skills together, we need to go back to the, you know, what existed a long time ago, which was this, you know, sort of shared technical resource base.
Do you think Australia has enough labour to complete all these mining projects? Are there too many, or do you think they can be done? It's somewhere near the schedules that have been set out for them.
Well, actually, the thing, if you had have asked me this a year ago, we would have highlighted people as a major concern. We saw that as a major business risk. In December of this year or January, we did 30% more work than we did in the period 12 months before. Since our AGM in November, we've gone from 51,000 staff to 54,000 staff. So currently we're delivering at the right momentum, so Leighton has the right number of resources to deliver on its commitments. The one thing that, you know, Australia has is an incredibly skilled workforce. You know, our tradesmen, our skill level is very high. What we've got to work on is the working environment to enable those skills to be used more productively and efficiently. To me, it's not about the number of people, it's about the output from those people. Are we currently constrained by people? No. Will Australia be constrained by people in the future? I believe yes, because Australia has so much more to offer the region than what we're currently doing. Now, Australia may choose that, no, we don't mind being constrained. You know, how much growth is enough growth? So, you know, do you want the Australian dollar to continue growing by, you know, getting these large surpluses coming through? So I think right now Australia is probably almost at capacity. A company like Leighton, though, is a good employer of people. We're able to attract people, so we're currently not constrained by people.
Are you constrained by the Fair Work Act?
The issue for me is around the government agenda. There's no question that, you know, if you look, I've used an example of, on our mining fleets, for instance, we can have someone step out of a truck and step in a truck and start driving, because as soon as they get in, there's a dispatch system which tells them which digger to go to, and it's like a baton change. It's a very efficient baton change, like, you know, like you get in the Olympics. And very productive, works very well. But if you're on say a 4-day on, 4-day off roster, and it's a trade, you know, an electrician wiring up some, you know, complicated, you know, sort of, I don't know, lighting or acoustic system in a room like this, and they're 6 hours into the job, and all of a sudden their shift ends, the next day someone comes, they have to undo everything that's been done and start again. So, you know, there needs to be flexibility to enable people to use their skills to carry out a task, but by limiting the work and the rosters and some of the things that are coming in are really making it very challenging for productivity in the industry.
Can't you, as managers, negotiate deals that overcome that?
The problem is that there's no one deal for one issue. In a factory that's got production work, rosters are fantastic. It works very well, but it depends on the trade and the environment. So I guess the main point for me is that there's no one solution for this productivity issue. There has to be an element of flexibility to do with all the different environments, all the different issues that we've got, all the different skills, the levels of trade, the complexity of what we're doing.
Is this a new thing as a result of the new Fair Work Act, or has it always been a problem, it's just that there's more of it now?
Look, I think the challenges have evolved over time. There's no question. For me, looking at it, the biggest negative at the moment is in regard to the impact that it's had on productivity.
The Fair Work Act.
The Fair Work Act. And if you look at the impact it's had on productivity, I look across all of the regions that Leighton work in. We're an Australasian company, and my concern is that Australia, while it's currently benefiting from commodities and resources, is becoming less and less productive. So, we want Australia to be sustainable, right? So we can't let these great profits in other areas that have been made mask a systemic problem with productivity. It's not about what we pay people, it's about the output we get from people. I talk to our workers on the site, they've got a huge amount of pride in what they do. People, they're craftsmen, they're tradesmen. But they don't want to leave halfway through something. If they start something, they want to finish it, they want to do it. So, I think there's, that's the key issue that has come to my attention in recent times.
How much do you think that the Fair Work Act has put up the cost of buildings and big projects, given that fall in productivity?
It's not that easy for us to determine, because if you look at Leighton, every day we're putting in tenders and we're pricing on today's price. So who pays for that increase in productivity is actually the clients. It's the user of the asset. It's the Australian government, the taxman, it's us. Leighton continually, if it costs us X dollars 1 month and 2 months later it's 10% more, well, we just build 10% more into our estimate.
But how much has it gone up, do you think? Has it gone up 10%, 20%?
I think if you look another way, has it gone up with at the same rate as the CPI of someone's salary? No, most definitely it's worse.
How much further?
So I think it's hard to estimate exactly. I had a very interesting discussion with a US company, and they operate all through the region, and they're all about people. And they were saying that when they calculate what country to go into, they look at productivity output of a person, they look at the cost per hour of that person, they look at the skill set, the training, they put all of those things together in a formula and come up with an answer of, right, this is the best place to go. You may have to use more people in a country, you may have to use less, but they look at it at a dollar cost per output. Australia has just been deteriorating down the run, which is why you're not seeing foreign direct investment coming in things like factories and people manufacturing here, etc. Why are we exporting so many raw materials? Is that we can't add value efficiently to them. So I think it's reflected in just seeing where the Australian economy is going, the type of projects that are happening, but certainly through the region it's deteriorated a lot over the years. And the skill's gone up, but the productivity's gone down.
To get back to the group for a moment, you've referred a number of times to the internal competition between the operating companies, and that's a model that's been there for a long time now. Do you fine-tune that? Do you leave it? Do you think it's a positive for the group?
It has to be fine-tuned, and it always was fine-tuned. When I first joined the group, well, I was actually part of John Holland, and John Holland wasn't part of the Leighton group there. It joined the Leighton group in 2000. Through the years, we've spun out Leighton Properties. We've created HLG. We had Leighton International, Leighton Asia. Every 3 or 4 months, there's a tweak done to the model. There's a new core competency that gets delivered. I think having multiple operating companies is great. What we've got to do is make sure that they're known for certain core competencies. They're all general, contractors at their core, but over time, what you'll do is that, when we have a discussion, you'll say, "Yep, I know. Company A is renowned for this. It may have telecommunication arm, it may be the rail arm, it may be the tunnelling arm, it may be the contract mining arm. So certainly, you know, what we're looking for is, you know, as the model evolves, it'll be evolving towards delivering those core competencies, and then we'll take those core competencies to markets where they're valued, and that may be throughout the, you know, the whole Australasian region. So our model is about diversification by brand, by geography, and by sector.
Leighton's now got a big presence outside Australia in that sort of wider Asia Pacific region, and you've obviously coming fresh out of Asia. Is that the focus for growth outside Australia?
Australia's going to continue growing, but Asia's going to grow faster. So we've got aspirational targets of having 30% of our business offshore, and that'll be predominantly in the Asian region. The turnover's about 12 to 15%, okay, but the work in hand is over 20%. So, you know, the lead indicators is there. More of our order book is currently overseas than what it was previously, and we're seeing more opportunities coming up as Asia's, you know, sort of the economic conditions in Asia start to improve. We've got, you know, about 5.5% growth across all the markets we work in Asia. And it's across all our core skills. It's about commodities, resources, and about infrastructure.
One of your predecessor, one removed, was King, of course. And Wal would point to the work in progress in the accounts and say, well, that's my profit. I've basically got my profit underwritten, or profit rises underwritten well into the future, unless there's a big mistake somewhere, a contracting mistake. Do you feel you're in that situation? That you have your profits, barring a disaster somewhere, your profits underwritten well into the future?
Well, when I did the results this Monday, you know, we for the, you know, one of the first times communicated what our profit was on our projects, and you know, it's over 10%. Now you think about that, you know, that's 10% over 5 years of a number of $46 billion. You know, it's $4.5 billion. So yeah, we have an incredible base of work on our projects now. You know, yes, there are business drivers, there are risks and everything that we monitor and we mitigate, but our core of our business is as good as it's ever been, and the market is delivering to us fantastic opportunities in our core competencies. So, you know, what Wal said is 100% right. You know, we can never lose track of the fact that we're a project-based business. We're a company, or operating companies, made up of over 400 projects. That's where our money is made. And that's where we need to make sure that we make the money.
And these higher costs in Australia that are coming out of Fair Work and other places, so far you've been able to pass them on in your tenders?
Well, in the end of the day, you know, we're asked to price a solution. So we're currently under preparation today is $30 billion worth of tenders across the Leighton Group. $30 billion worth of tenders.
That's in addition to the 40?
They're the tenders that are currently being prepared. So all of those tenders have been prepared with current day pricing, current day productivity, etc. You know, obviously that's what we do.
So you can pass it on?
Of course. You know, it's not necessarily passing it on, it's providing the solution. So, you know, there's no way that Leighton are going to price a job and not price in the reality of what it's going to cost. So if there's escalation in materials, if there's you know, another solution, we can pass on savings, value engineering, we pass those on. But if there's an increased cost in labour, we also pass that on.
And that means our roads and our hospitals cost more?
If there's escalation, it does.
Thank you very much indeed, Hamish.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate it.